Hi! Welcome to the course. Welcome to the Inner Brilliance Planning Guide, Module 1. So, we are here today. I am in beautiful Bali. You can hear all the birds around me. You can see how sweaty I am, so bear with me. What we're going to do today is we're actually going to go through the PDF. So in the email, along with this video, is a PDF. So make sure you open it up and follow along. We'll work our way through it. It'll take around an hour, maybe a little bit longer. So make sure that you're in a good space. You have done your cleansing exercises, your breathing exercises, you're feeling good, ready, focused, and we can be on our way. So for Module 1, Module 1 is called the Super Sexy Root Cause Research. Okay, so this is the foundation for all of the other modules. It's really important that we do this one first. What we're going to look at in this module are some common myths about relationships. Now, probably one of the reasons why you bought this course was because you watched my webinar, which is about the common myths about relationships. So you have a choice. We're going to go through them a little bit faster today because we have a lot of content to get through. So if you want to go back and watch that video again, you can. My intention for today is I want to go through them, and I also want to give you some takeaway tools that you can use, that you can actually integrate into your relationship and your life right away. So we'll go over those a little bit faster than we did in the webinar, but we will touch on those. We'll also talk about the root cause. Like this whole module is called root cause research. So the root cause of your core beliefs, where do those come from? That leads right nicely into your mind, body, heart connection, which is one of my passions, one of the things that I'm super, super obsessed with. And that leads in nicely to priming yourself for pleasure and enjoyment. And then we'll look at your baseline pie chart. We always like the Virgo in me really likes to have everything kind of organized and structured, and so that we have a baseline value system of where you are now, so you can see your progress as you go through the course, as you go through the weeks and the modules and things start to integrate. I want you to see how things shift and change. Okay, so one thing might get better, one thing might seem like it's taking a little bit more energy. We'll see how things pan out in that pie chart. So every week we're going to do one of those. And then at the end there's some journal prompts that I want you to go through, take your time all week with them. And I also have at the end some reading material if you want to look at what my references are and take a look at some of your own personal reading. Okay, so first section, common myths about relationship. So relationships we have a lot of conditioning around relationships. We have a lot of ideas and beliefs on how they should work. We have this kind of fairy tale romantic idea of how they're supposed to be, and then there's the reality of how they actually exist. And those two things have to be hammered out. They have to be unpacked and looked at. So these are kind of the top 5 myths that I've seen in my practice, in my own life, in everybody, kind of on all of the observations that I've made. These are the top. You could relate all of the myths into kind of these top 5 categories. So I think they're really important. The first one is that relationships owe us something. So if I give something in a relationship, I should get something in return. Giving and receiving are a means to an end. So you're actually only ever giving so that you can get something back. And it might be something that is not even, it's a covert agreement, what we call a covert agreement. So what that means is it hasn't been overtly shared that if I give you this, you give me that. It's actually just an underlying baseline assumption. So we get into danger about a lot of conflict if there's some subconscious or semi-conscious programs running that say, okay, if I give you, for example, a big one is, if I give you sex, then you'll give me security. That's a huge common one. Or if I give you, if I cook you dinner, then you'll come out with me and my friends on another day. Or everybody's been in this fight where it's like you get defensive and you say, well, I gave you this and I did that and I mowed the lawn and I got the groceries and I did this, and you start stacking up all the things that you've done for the other person or for the relationship, and the other person then goes into their list of all the things they've done, and it becomes this transactional relationship that actually doesn't work. So what we want to do is really dive into what relationship actually is. It's this constant, present moment by moment giving and reception. Giving, I give, you receive, you give, and vice versa. So when you give something, you actually, there's pleasure in giving. There's pleasure in providing. There's pleasure in knowing that you're useful and you're valued and that the person likes what you've given them and all of that. You're actually getting something in return. So that should be the spirit of giving in most of your relating, is that giving and receiving is in and of itself the end, right? There is no other means to it. You're not trying to get anything else other than that. When you come from that place, when you're giving from your heart, then everything else just seems to be more unconditional, more authentic. It feels better. That's my rooster friend. He's gonna pipe in a few times in this course. So basically, we're giving and we're receiving as like, that's like the actual reality of what's going on in the connection, like in the present moment of the connection. So like I said in the webinar, we as women have a hard time, not in the giving, we're really good givers, right? We are really, really good at providing, at giving, at nurturing, at doing all these things for all these different people. But what we're actually not that great at is receiving. And this is where I'm working with a lot of different women to be better at receiving things like compliments, things like gifts, like things like service, like having people do things for you that you feel you have these beliefs that you should do yourself. All of that is actually, we have a lot of power in our ability to receive. If we can just open up our ability to actually receive and take things in, whether they're good or bad, then there's a lot of power in that. And actually, when you receive something well, a gift really well, let's say, you actually pay them back in that moment. This is what I mean by this is like this present moment reality, moment by moment dynamic that happens when somebody gives you something, when somebody brings me a cup of tea, and I am just so happy about it. I'm just like, this is going to provide me with warmth, with comfort, with hydration, with a little caffeine, and I'm just, like I exude this like really great reception, and I take it in, and I'm grateful, I'm gracious. Then that actually pays the person who gave that to me. It pays them back in real time. So if I go and I actually try to give them something back later, I'm paying them twice. So if I bring them tea later, that's a whole new set of present moment. Like, I'm now the giver, they're now the receiver, and they pay me back with their reception. I don't actually have to bring them a cup of tea to pay them back. Does that make sense? I hope that makes sense. If you have any questions at any time, please do not hesitate to get in contact with me, message me. I'm available on Facebook, I'm available by email. Just please don't hesitate to contact me if any of these things bring up any issues with you, trigger you, or you just have like some logistical questions. I'm happy to explain it to you. So make sure you make some notes. So, myth number 2, the purpose of relationship is to feel safe and in control and to have power. So lots of relationships end up being this power dynamic, right? Of who has more power, who feels powerless, who feels more able to exert their control, make choices. There's always this constant dynamic. And so we want to get to the point where that dynamic is fairly equal and it's in a place where it's sexy. And right now, in most relationships, it's not very sexy. It's about control, it's about manipulation, it's about feeling safe, it's about feeling dominant over the other person or submissive. So again, that can be really sexy and hot, but it also, the toxic mimic of it is not so sexy and not so fun, and it causes a lot of pain, right? Like everybody's been in that. I know I've been in that position where I felt completely powerless. I cannot seem to get him to understand me. I cannot seem to get him to do what I want him to do. I feel utterly powerless in the relationship. And that isn't fun. It's something we all go through, and it isn't fun. And the way that we get through that is we build this container around the relationship. And this is something that I do in my coaching, especially with couples. Is one of the first things that we do is we build a container around the relationship. So we build a container of commitment, of safety, of these are kind of the, like I said before, there's that difference between overt and covert rules. Well, we build in as many overt rules as we can, within reason. I mean, you don't want to be so structured that you lose kind of the spirit of the relationship, but you build those in, so you kind of give away your game. You build this container that you feel as safe as you can in, for the purpose of being able to go out of control. Because this is really what women want. We want to feel so safe with our partner that we're able to completely shut off our brain and let them take care of us, let them give us an orgasm, let them do and provide us with something that creates something new, that's a new experience that helps us feel alive and kind of like edgy in a good way, and vital, and that like really like kind of orgasmic feeling that we can live in day to day. So this means that we negotiate these terms of the container so we both can play inside it. And it is important for men to feel safe too. They have less of a vigilance center than we do. So we as women really need to be aware of the things that are in order. And that's a whole dynamic thing that shifts too. Like the conditions for us to feel safe, we want to over time, like at the beginning they might be like a barrier of like a fortress, but over time, as we get more and more in touch with ourselves and connected with ourselves, we want that barrier to break down slowly so that we can have more facility in different arenas that we feel safe in, because our sense of safety is coming from within us, because we trust ourselves so much that we know we can follow our intuition and we can say, okay, I'm good here, or if I really feel unsafe, I'll get out of this situation. But we trust our bodies and our own sense of internal safety so deeply that it comes from within us instead of having to use external ways to feel safe. Okay, so that was number 2. Number 3 is this idea of novelty. So only new people, places, experiences are exciting. We have to continuously look outside ourselves for fun, for excitement, for that dopamine rush. And then, like I said in the webinar, it becomes this chase, this dopamine chase, which means we have to get more and more and more to have the same amount of sensation in our body, which is, again, the definition of addiction. So people get addicted to, they're doing something back there. People get addicted to all sorts of things. They get addicted to to food. We as women, that's a common one for us: alcohol, drugs, sex, pornography, all of these things that we can get addicted to because they spike up our dopamine in this like new novel feeling. So what we actually want to do is refine our ability to pay attention to our sensations, to our present moment, to the nuances in our present moment. And we get so good at paying closer and closer attention that there's actually a never-ending novelty in people. Especially people, because this is about relationships, but also with places and experiences and anything really. So we're continuously building our attention, our ability to pay attention. So again, meditation is a way that we can do this. We can also come into relationship with this idea that there's always something new to learn, and we'll talk a little bit more about that in I think it's myth number 5. Myth number 4 is the only way to please others in relationship is to comply, to give in, to pretend, to perform, to acquiesce, to basically pretend to be something that we're not, to give in and say yes when we really mean no, or say no when we really mean yes. Like basically not telling the truth. Really that comes down to not being able to tell the truth because we're so codependent that telling the truth would mean that the other person would be upset. So interdependence is when you can tell the truth to somebody else, and even though they get upset, you may be concerned about them being upset and you care, but it doesn't alter your internal environment of happiness because you're so sure and rooted in yourself. And this is where we learn to feel this limbic connection. We learn to feel our sensations. We learn to feel ourselves. And we develop competence and confidence in ourselves, in our ability to feel ourselves and then to feel the other and know what's going on. And then that situation where, we as women, we do this all the time where we tell men, like that whole classic, like, you're mad about something. And your husband or your partner can feel that you're mad because you're totally mad. Like, you definitely are mad, but you go, yeah, I'm fine. Like, we've all done that, right? Like, let's just fess up. We've all done it. So when you do that, what you're doing is actually training him to not trust how he feels. And you're training him to not trust his limbic connection with you. And that's really, really sad, and it really does a disservice to you in the long run because you actually want him to be able to feel you in a true way. So if he can feel you, then you're that much more connected. He knows what your desires are. He knows how to tune into you. He knows how to really access you and give you what you want. But the thing is, that's super scary as well because then somebody else knows us in an intimate way. And we do a lot of things to try to protect ourselves from being seen and known. So it's like we want it, but we don't. So what we really need to do in this myth is to be honest at the end of the day. It's really about being honest. And they have, in the courses that I've taken, they have this saying that is that truth is verbal orgasm. So in the way that orgasm is like this thing that makes you feel alive and excited and full and flushed and vital, telling the truth can do the same thing, right? It like makes your face red, it's like vulnerable, it's scary, but it also feels really good to have it out in the open, and that's what that means. Like, it's super, telling the truth is super, super powerful, and I will back this up until my dying day that telling the truth is like the thing that we need to aim towards. So number 5 is it healthy to push each other competitively? So competition is a little bit of a tricky thing because in one sense competition is fun, it's playful. I mean, if it's something like a board game or something benign, right? I don't have a problem with it. But when it gets sticky is when we start to get competitive with each other in life. Like, oh, he's advancing his career farther than me because I'm stuck home with the kids, or he's making more money than me, or she's making more money than me, and now I have to like fight for power and respect, and yeah, we want to keep pushing each other and growing, and but there's this kind of, our differences are actually threatening each other, and this relates to like this dynamic between the masculine and the feminine, and these differences can sometimes threaten each other, especially in this very masculine world that we live in. So we live in this competitive, achievement-based world where, you know, you have to kind of, it's a zero-sums game. Like, I have to get ahead, and that means you're behind, and that can sneak into our relationships. And I think that we need to pay attention to that. So we actually want to create more polarity in our relationship. We want to come away from this me versus you thinking, and rather be in teamwork with our differences and make our differences allies. So like, my femininity is an ally to my partner's masculinity. As an example, like my feminine promotes his masculine. And when we do that and we're healthy with that, we actually can go farther and create more than we could if we were both competing to be masculine, for example. So it's this, we want to come away from this me versus you thinking and go more into teamwork. So that is myth number 5, and what to do about it. So that's the first part. I know we're going through this super fast. I want to get through all of it. There's just so much I want to share with you. Okay, so part 2. So take a breather if you need to. You can pause the video. Go get a drink of water, go get a coffee, go get something if you need to, and always come back and re-listen to anything that you need to listen to. So the second part is the root cause, this root cause that's so sexy, of our core beliefs. So we have these stories and these beliefs that exist in our psyche. And I love this psychologist and writer named Lynn Forrest, who talks about this story. Like, you can write out what your story is. Jordan Peterson also has this self-authoring program where you write out your story of who you are now, where you're at, and where you want to go. So the story is a collection of your beliefs. And some of them are conscious and some of them are subconscious. And all of these beliefs started when you were a kid, when you were a child, and then they got reinforced with more experience as you grew older. So there's some things that were repeated over and over and ingrained in you and actually formed these like grooves in your neural pathways that are like super highways of thoughts, of reoccurring things that, okay, when this happens, this is my belief about it. So when we look at things like anxiety and fear, we can actually break that down to this root cause of something that we want or we need. So this is where we start to talk about a little bit about desire as well. Like, behind every complaint is a desire. So for example, if I say I'm cold, what my desire is for a sweater, for example. So under all of these beliefs is that we actually need and want something. And we have a big fear of not getting the love and attention. It might even be more like survival based, like we might actually want and need food or shelter, friendship, a job, like all of these desires and things that we want, whether they're like lower chakra survival, or they're like heart-centered and love, or they're higher aspect, like you want a new job or something more challenging. All of these desires, and then we have these fears that follow that they're not going to get met. So the good news in this is that we can change our beliefs, we can change the fears, and we can mitigate fear. We don't ever get rid of fear completely, and it's not something we would want to do, because it's an important part, right? You want to fear touching the stove because it's going to burn you. So there's actual real fears, but then there's a lot of fears that are controlling us and guiding us and programming us that are actually not serving us, and they're not based in any kind of reality. So those are the ones we want to unpack and look at and set free, so that they aren't in charge anymore. And the first step in doing that is to start questioning our beliefs, like to take a step back and to go, okay, not everything I believe is true. And one of my favorite processes for doing this, you can look this up, is Byron Katie's The Work. So you can look at your beliefs and step by step start to analyze them. The second step is to investigate our own traumas and our subconscious beliefs. And the way to, it's like you can find a guiding thread to your trauma and to your subconscious by looking at your resentments. And we will talk about that a lot more later on, a little bit more in this module, but a lot more in some of the following modules. So some examples of some common core beliefs that might not be serving us. So these are like kind of there, if you look, core belief, what I mean by that is you're looking below the surface of, like, there might be a belief of, let's take an example here. So I'm defective. So one belief may be, I'm not good enough to do this. I have fear around being discovered that I'm not competent. They'll all find out that I can't actually do this. There's something wrong with me. Oh, and then the core belief is actually that I'm a defective human being and I'm not whole, and there's something actually really wrong with me. And that would have been a message that was given to you at a young age. For some reason, that's how you interpreted the world, for whatever reason. And probably for a good reason. So if you take a couple of these core beliefs, you can start to build a story around them. Like just like how I went back from a top belief, you can actually build all this whole story and construct around these beliefs, and then that affects how you feel, and it also affects how you behave and the actions that you're taking. And the more we build awareness around these core beliefs and we step back and we question them, the more we have the power to actually nip these beliefs in the bud. And in my experience, when they're really deep and core like this, what happens with me is that I'll discover the core belief and it'll land, I'll figure it out, but I won't be able to actually stop the behavior for a little bit of time. So I'll go through another cycle of going through the behavior, like I'll date the same type of guy, but I'll do it faster and I'll watch myself do it this time. And then in watching myself do it, I can actually be like, okay, I know what the consequence is going to be here. Okay, yeah. Okay, now the next time I'll actually not go down that path at all. I just know there's no cheese in that hole. So I'll stop that behavior. But for me, it's like I do the thing, and then I watch myself do the thing, and then I stop eventually doing the behavior that's around the belief. So it's important to accept and validate all of these emotions and feelings that are coming up around our stories and our beliefs, because the beliefs might not be true, but the feelings and the sensations in our bodies are really real. They're in the present moment. They are happening. So to deny that is basically gaslighting ourselves, right? Like we actually have to acknowledge that what we're feeling is real. It's just the beliefs around them are not real. And this takes a lot of courage. So one of the most powerful practices that you can do is to actually feel through your emotions. So something happens and you actually go through the emotion, you validate it, and you welcome it to move through you instead of trying to avoid it. And we spend a lot of time trying to avoid emotional pain, like a lot of energy. And a lot of this, again, is for good reason. We have our personal history. We had to separate from some of this emotional pain or physical pain to survive, like anybody with sexual abuse had to actually dissociate to survive that psychic pain. So in that way, it's there for a reason, and we can acknowledge that and validate that. And at the same time, we don't want to keep recreating that same story over and over again if it's not working for us. So the dogs agree. They're on my side. They're awesome. So one example I have of this, of sensation, is that sensation of feeling nervous. So nervous and excitement is actually the same sensation in your body. It's like jittery, like maybe some constriction in your belly, like butterflies and that's awesome. Butterflies and all of it. So, but the difference between nervous and excitement is the belief that we have around it. Like if you're nervous, then you are anticipating something bad happening. But if you're excited, then you're anticipating something good happening. So it's just the way that you're looking at the sensation. You're feeling, you're interpreting the sensation, but it's actually the same sensation. So that leads us into triggers and trauma. So this is a hot topic, right? And I don't intend to push you into it. I have this when I'm coaching. I have this criteria of green, yellow, red. And so right now, hopefully you're in like green or yellow. Maybe you're likely you're not in yellow even really. You're like in between green and yellow. But green is like you're just relaxed, you're happy, you're good. Yellow is you're kind of being pushed a little bit. You're being challenged. You're just on your comfort zone. Orange would be like you're right on the edge of your comfort zone. But red is when you're actually triggered and you're going into a past trauma, into a trigger. So red is like you don't really have a lot of control over how your emotions are coming through. A good example is road rage. You're really triggered in road rage. You can't really control how you're feeling or how you're reacting. It is very much a reaction. So what I intend for this type of online course is just to maybe stay in yellow, like green, yellow. Like it's just really for information, and it's setting the stage so that you can start to ease into some of these more edgy belief unpacking, really transformational modalities. But first, for me anyway, I like to have the information. So that's where we talk here about triggers and trauma. And these are just a natural byproduct of being socialized as a human being. We all have trauma, we all have triggers, every single one of us, to a higher or lower extent, some of us. It can happen based in our development. It does happen. Like you can't avoid it. Even if you're the perfect mother, you're still going to cause trauma. You're still going to, it's just unavoidable part of being socialized. And trauma happens when something threatens our physical or emotional safety. So it creates this defense mechanism in the moment that we use to cope and survive. And this defense mechanism becomes a tool that we subconsciously use to cope with similar future experiences. We hold on to these survival tools later in life, regardless of whether they continue to have a positive or negative impact on our lives, right? So one of the traumas that I worked through was, I'm pretty sure, like I had some trauma around being left in a crib to cry too long. So I had some issues around scarcity, and I had some issues around being left, and having somebody who was supposed to be taking care of me walk into the room and then leave right away because, you know, my mom was a really good person, a really good mom, but she was a human being. So she might have come in and then left, and I was really hungry, and there, you know, my little baby brain had to think of some way to survive with that. And so there was some trauma I had to work through around that. So it can be as simple as that, or it can be as complicated as like PTSD from having been through something super traumatic even in adulthood, right? So it's really like the big thing is like, the best way I've heard it described is like your body was in a high sensation moment where you were in fight or flight, and you went to go throw a ball. Like it's like, this is like a metaphor. So your body went to go, all that energy that goes into like really wanting to whip a ball far, goes to throw it, and something blocks it. Something stops it. And so all that energy is locked into your system, and your body actually wants to find a way to move through the whole thing. So it locks in this pattern, and then it keeps recreating the pattern over and over again into your adulthood so that you can fully go through the whole cycle. That's the way that I understand it. So some of our perceptions and beliefs are subconsciously built around these traumas. And the way to heal trauma is, the good news is I actually 100% believe that all trauma is completely and 100% curable. I've seen it in a lot of somatic therapies, and my military experience has shown me that if you go through the right healing modalities and the right practitioners and the ones who use like this somatic therapy, and they really are recognizing and validating and using like visualization to get your needs met and integrating all of this, there is a way to heal the trauma, which is super, super exciting. And then when it's healed, you can actually replace that old belief, those old beliefs and stories with new ones that serve you better. So I know this might sound a little bit complicated, but it actually isn't. And there's a ton of reading that you can do, and I've put the references in the end of this document, so make sure you take a look at that. So what we're really doing here is learning to tune into our bodies and our emotions and validate the way that we feel and move through these scary emotions to the other side, because on the other side is freedom. When you know that you can move through a really difficult emotion, there's power on the other side of that. Like, you know that you can get through it. Now you're not spending all this energy avoiding these sensations in your body or these bad negative feelings. You're actually knowing, okay, I can push through this onto the other side. And then you can also help other people do that as well. So it's really beautiful, really important. Triggers, on the other hand, triggers are the things that kind of indicate trauma, right? So they're very emotional reactions. They are reactions like anger, fear, hurt, defensiveness. They say that, I can't remember where I heard this, so that's why I'm saying they say, but hysterical is historical. So if you're doing anything that feels like over the top or overwhelmed, or you're out of control, or you're, anybody that tells a woman she's overreacting, likely it's some kind of historical trauma, and the trigger is pointing to that. It's like a roadmap sign that's pointing to the trauma. So triggers can also cause, on the flip side of causing like things like anger and defensiveness, they can also cause numbing, like denial and fear, dissociation. That there's fight, flight, but there's also freeze. So, and this is more so the thing that I had to work through, and I've seen probably 3/4 of my clients, and especially men, they're more so going into this freeze trauma than unless it's a road rage situation. So we go into this like very much like my body just kind of freezes, and I can't have access to any of my emotion or any feeling or any sensation. I have no idea what to do. And it used to cause some issues in my relationships too, because it was like I was totally checked out and I wasn't. I just couldn't do anything until I worked through that trauma. So that is that. And that leads to our mind, body, heart connection. And like I said, like this is again this root cause sexy analysis of what's actually going on in your relationship, because the mind body connection, like your relationship to yourself, to your own mind, your body, and your heart is the foundation of everything, right? So let's really break this down. Let's divide and conquer it and look at, again, if you need a break, this is a good time to pause the video and take a break, because this is going to be a little bit heavy as well in information. If you're already not aware of the 3 parts of our brain, so take a break, get something, get a chocolate bar, get something that feels good, and let's hunker in and really learn about the parts of the brain, because the mind-body connection is, once we can hack into that, we can heal ourselves, we can heal our relationships, we can tap into our purpose, like we can do anything when we're hooked into this mind-body connection. And we also can cause a lot of harm. So there's the placebo effect, right? And there's also the nocebo effect. And the placebo effect is like, oh, I believe it, so it'll happen. And then the nocebo is the opposite of that. It's, I believe it won't happen, so then it doesn't happen. And we see that over and over in medicine. Like when in pharmacy school, they belittled the placebo effect. Like, oh, it's just the placebo effect. Like, what is that? What do you mean just the placebo? Like, what do you mean just your mind created the same effect as the drug? Like, that's crazy. That's amazing. Like, let's look at that. That's so mysterious. So I've really been interested in the placebo effect for a long time. So what's actually going on here? So my reference here is Yvette Rose. She talks about the head mind, the heart mind, and the body mind. And there's also the sexual mind, which I'm super I call myself an orgasmic leader and advocate for a reason. I have a big interest in sexual health as well. So I think it's a really important part of our desire and our creativity. So we won't leave out the the sexual mind, but we'll come back to it. So for now, we'll talk about the head mind. So this is the most developed part